Hi guys, Raindell here. With the EX meta upon us, TMRs are easier to obtain than ever. The new bottleneck is now Blossoms, and no longer are the Rainbow Fragments of Thoughts or Rainbow Vision Spheres. I have plenty of those now. And so I have a lot more TMRs that I used to have. And so today I want to cover which TMRs are the best in their specific roles, what they do and how to best use them, and whether they are worth investing these armor pots into them. And I guess the first thing to say is that armor pots are limited. I feel like I have way more TMRs that need to be leveled than I have resources to actually level them. So you have to pick and choose and select those that will improve your account the most. And when you level them, it costs more and more as you go. So you could potentially get all your TMRs to level 10 without too much trouble. Getting them to 15 costs a lot more, and then getting them from 15 to 20 is crazy. You could have 2 TMRs at 15 for the cost that it would take you to get them from 15 to 20. So before investing all the way and getting a TMR to level 20, you really need to make sure that you're going to be using it, because if you invest into it and you end up not using it, that's a big waste. And then I am a big fan of TMRs with AoE abilities. Not only does that mean you get a buff on everybody on your team, but it's also useful to manipulate AI. In a lot of scenarios, characters, if they don't have an AoE buff to cast, will buff themselves and then rush forward. And if you want to keep your attacker safe for the first couple turns and make sure that they don't rush ahead of your tank, for example, well, you can always give them a TMR with an AoE ability, so that in their first turn they buff, then your tank moves forward, and then your DPS moves and follows the tank. So these are really important things to know about TMRs, and it's the reason why usually I'll always favor TMRs that have AoE abilities over those that might have single target abilities. So first of all, let's talk about TMRs that are in a category of their own, and that's AP Restore effects. These are critical in War of the Visions. If you're using a physical attacker with low base AP, low starting AP, then they're not going to be able to attack several times in a row with their big skills. You need some way to generate AP, and bells are the best way to do that. I won't dwell on that item for too long, but you definitely need it at level 20, because the difference between 10% of your max AP per turn and 25% of your max AP per turn is really important. Then the second item that has a AP Restore effect per turn is the Aldewan Apron. It is much more limited in scope compared to Xyza's Bells, because it can only be equipped to certain jobs. But it restores AP a little bit. That's only going to be 5% per turn, so it's not a lot, usually 7 or so per turn. But what you get on top of that is 50% defense penetration at max level. Now, even at level 1, 30% defense penetration is really great, so you don't necessarily have to invest all the way. But I have found a lot of value out of having this at level 20. And then it's so strong that when I check out a new job, I always try to see whether they can equip the Aldewan Apron or not. Because for me, if classes can equip that piece of gear, they are much better than if they can't. Like Tabi can equip that. She can go all the way to 90% defense penetration, and that is crazy to me. So these two are really good, and they're definitely good investments. At the very least, bells, and then perhaps the Aldewan Apron if you need some more AP and you have physical attackers for which you want some more defense penetration. Now on to the defensive TMR categories, and there are 2 TMRs in the game that I think are the best outside of Xyza's Bells, and it is Mashari's TMR and Yuna's TMR. They both have a very similar role. I would say Mashari's TMR is the best though. For 2 reasons. First of all, it's an accessory, so it doesn't lock your armor slot, but also the effect is just a little bit better. So what they do, they both heal for 210 mods, so the equivalent of a Curaga in an AoE around your character. Mashari's TMR will give you a 30% barrier on everybody for 3 times, no matter the damage type. That is extremely strong. You can use this preventively by casting it on your first turn and then going into the fight. Or you can wait until you've received a couple hits and then use it, heal back up to full, and be tankier after that. It's very impactful. It is especially great for manual play where you can proc it at the best time, but the AI will use it when you're low, especially if you're putting that on a healer that has an AI that's naturally tuned to heal. And then we've all seen, I believe, Smile practiced being used quite often from Yuna. That's a little bit weaker because you get the healing, but you only get Protect and Shell, which is a 25% mitigation. So it's less effective than Knight's Blessing. Now, 3 turns instead of 3 times. There's a difference there as well. 3 turns might be better if you're getting tons of attacks on your characters, but more often than not, the 3 turns will run out before you've received 3 attacks. So 3 times is actually more reliable in a longer fight. So overall, I think players that run Yuna and that have access to Mashari's TMR should level that and tuck away their Yuna's clothing. They will get a better effect out of Mashari's TMR, and they'll be able to equip a Galmia coat or some other piece of gear in their second slot instead. So that's definitely stronger in my perspective, but you can also run both. I've seen teams, especially in live PvP, activate Knight's Blessing and then Smile Practice. They're going to have Protect and Shell and a barrier to close in on the enemy team, and they're basically invincible for a couple turns. So they are both top tier. You need at least one of them, and you should probably get it to level 15 or even 20. Now there are a couple other TMRs that have really good defensive effects in an AoE. Kingmon's TMR is one of them, and I see a lot of them with it equipped to great effect. You get the ability to increase AoE resistance for 3 turns for everybody on your team by 25. That's crazy. It's really good when you have a tank, because it means that if your tank is caught in an AoE and your other guys still take damage, they have less chance of getting one punched in the back. So it's really good, and then Kingmon can use that to even better effect because he has in it AoE resistance. But that one is very strong, and since it moves from 10 to 25, you get a lot of benefit out of leveling it. For some TMRs, you'll see that there's barely any gain, but in this case, 10 AoE resistance is really weak, and 25 is very, very strong, so you need to invest some levels into it to get some benefit. Rain's TMR that we see down there is very similar. Now you move from 10 to 25 Spirit this time. So this TMR is really more about resisting magical attacks. It will be better against mage teams than Mon's TMR, but it doesn't have the versatility of being able to tank any kind of AoE attack. So if you're fighting physical attackers, you don't really benefit from that Spirit all that much. I personally don't have Kingmon's TMR, but I use Rain's TMR in a lot of my teams because it's just so good at making sure that my guys don't get one-shot by the enemy Yuna or the enemy Sakura's Limit Burst. So these are TMRs that you should at least consider investing all the way to level 15, I think. Moving on to offensive TMRs. I think the first TMR that somebody should invest in this category should be Medina or Cecil's TMR. I don't think you need both because their effects are very, very similar. What they do is they have a large AoE in which they increase attack and magic by 30%. Now, in the case of Cecil's TMR, it also increases bravery. And it is one of the only ways to farm bravery on auto because your AI will actually use that. So that's a big pro for Cecil's TMR. But I believe in combat, Medina's TMR is actually stronger because you're getting acquired AP up 50 for 3 turns, which means your team is going to generate a lot more AP in their buff turns early in the fight. And that might be the difference between throwing out 1 or 2 more attacks or just using more powerful abilities early on. So they are both great, mainly because of the very large AoE and the fact that since they increase both attack and magic, they will benefit just about anybody on your team, so they are very versatile in their applications. Then we have King Rob's TMR, which increases slash attack, still the most common damage type in the game, by 20 for 3 turns, and restores CT. That is the core of the cheese blade build that we've seen using Rob and Ildira to get an extra turn on everybody on your team, play twice for everyone before anyone else on the enemy team plays, and then wreck others in PvP. Not a very clean method to win, but it exists. But even in PvE or in other game modes, having access to charging half of the turn bar for everybody that's affected is very good. I think this TMR is top tier just because of the CD manipulation. But if you use it on slash attackers, you still get a bunch of extra damage as well. I like to run it in any composition in which I can afford to give a heavy armor to one of my guys and lose out on a little bit of agility, probably. So I would recommend getting that one to 15 at least, and if you want to use it for PvP or for cheese strategies, then you need it all the way to level 20. Then, Miranda's TMR is one that I use very often, and I don't see other players use it all that much, but I think it's great. Elegant Encouragement increases both magic and slash attack by 25 for 3 turns for your allies. Magic and slashing are the most common damage types, so most of your characters can actually benefit from that. And then a 25 buff is quite a bit. It's not as much as what a maxed out vision card will give you, because they give 35, but we're getting close to that amount, so it's a very large boost to most characters you're going to use. I like running this on characters that don't have very good TP skills to use. For example, if I'm using Xiza, I don't want her to rush to the enemy team in the first turn because she'll just get killed. So I need her to use an AoE ability in the back line. Well, this is a perfect one. If she's paired with a mage or a slash attacker, she'll be making them stronger in her first turn. She'll cast that buff, and then on following turns, she'll do her usual job. So for any character that doesn't have good AoE buff, Miranda's TMR is usually a good one to place in most team comps. Garvel's TMR is one of a kind. It increases magic. Sure, that's normal. But it also increases magic resistance penetration by 50%. That is insane. With that, you can go into fights with your mages and not have to worry whether the enemy team is going to have a magic immune character. It's really easy with Spellblades to get teams that have very high magic resistance. And typically, that's how I've been fighting Yuna, that's how I'm planning to fight Black Rose Helena, because it's just a nice way to shut down magic attackers. But if you're running the Peace Brooch Talisman on one of your characters, you can use Fury Surge, and then you're ignoring most magic resistance. You don't care that much what the enemy team is building. That means you can go into matchups, first of all, blind matchups like Guild Wars or class matches without worrying about what you're going to face. And then you probably don't need this in Arena because you'll be targeting enemies without magic resistance. But if you do fight an enemy with magic resist, this allows your magic attacker to be reliable on no matter the enemy they're targeting. So it's really top tier in this specific scenario. If you're planning on going for Black Witch Helena, with this and the staff that's going to be released with her, she will have a total of 90% magic resist penetration, and you will not be able to build against her to mitigate her damage. So it's really an incredible piece of gear for mages, and I think if you have a mage-heavy account or you want to focus on those characters, you definitely need to get that one to 15 and perhaps even level 20. Now, another aspect of offense is accuracy, and there are a lot of ways to fight evasion units. Just use guaranteed hit abilities and you'll be fine in most scenarios. But if you're playing a team that doesn't have guaranteed hit abilities, there are 2 TMRs which I think are really good to increase the accuracy in your team. First off, Yerma's TMR increases accuracy by 30 at level 1. So if you want a piece of gear that you don't really have to level and still gives you a big boost to accuracy, this is it. If you do level it though, you can get accuracy all the way up to plus 60. Generally, that'll be enough to hit the enemy you need. Then Elsirel's TMR is pretty much useless at level 1. I think you have to level it to at least 15 to make a good use of it. But if you do, you get a up to 30 accuracy in an AoE. So this one is weaker in terms of how much accuracy you get compared to Yerma's TMR. But it's in an AoE, so it's going to affect all your characters. So I would still say that there are scenarios where it's going to be better than Yerma's. Now, there are quite a few TMRs that increase mobility. I personally like them a lot. I think you have to play manual play to make the most out of it, because in most scenarios, if you're playing on auto and you make one of your characters more mobile, what they'll do is they will rush to the enemy team first and then die. So that's not what you want. But in a lot of scenarios, you can make it work and have it benefit you, especially if you have the human intelligence behind it to know when to go in and out of the enemy team. So let's talk about those. Raldor's TMR, he's not a limited character, and I think players should aim to max him just to get that TMR eventually. 30 more accuracy and 1 more move is really, really strong. Especially if you're going in a blind matchup like Guild Wars and you're not sure if you're going to be fighting an evadey enemy team, that gives you some guarantee that you're going to be able to hit them, and it's going to put your tankier character in front if you put it on a tankier character. So I would say it's a really strong one. Kane's is even better. Haste and move up is insane. I've seen that TMR be used quite often, and it is always dominant. It has one weakness compared to the other options though. It is a helm, so that means you need a character that can equip it to make use of it. So that's a little bit limited in terms of who can actually use it. And then Ketone's TMR is interesting. You gain move up, jump 1 for 3 turns, so it's the best one of these in terms of mobility. And then it decreases hate. Never level this TMR. It decreases hate from 6 to 8. That difference is never going to make a huge impact in your fights, so you keep that at level 1. It is good as is. I like this one a lot because it also has agility in its stats. And when I'm looking at my equipment in general, I want one of my 3 pieces of gear to increase my agility because I want my team to go fast. So this is a really good thing. Now, there are 2 TMRs that have a huge impact on evasion, and I think that's pretty interesting. First of all, Duel's TMR, she just got released, but that thing increases luck in an AoE, and then also nullifies blind and stop for 3 turns. That's a crazy combination. You could use it as an accuracy up TMR as well, because luck influences accuracy as much as evasion. But the thing is, since it's a percentage increase, if you're using this on a unit with low base luck, they won't be getting all that much accuracy. So if you're using this, I would mostly use it for evasion purposes, because then you have a team that you know has high luck, and you're just going to increase evasion through the roof. Then another TMR that increases evasion itself is Nivlu's TMR, the V Mask. It does have the major drawback that it can only be equipped to ranged attackers, so there aren't that many characters that can actually leverage that. But an increase to evasion of 30 for 3 turns is pretty much crazy. I want to try a team running both TMRs, having them both activate in the beginning of the fight, and then making my guys impossible to hit for 3 turns. So I'll probably make a video of that in the near future. Then here are 2 pieces of gear that aren't really seeing much play, but I think they're interesting in their specific setups. First of all, Whisper's TMR is often used for the resistances, right? People will use it because it gives every resistance plus 5%, but they won't use its ability. But its ability is crazy. For 1 turn, you're increasing defense and spirit by 45 on a target. It consumes some of your HP, but then it makes somebody almost invincible for 1 turn. What I think this TMR is good for is if you equip it on a green mage, or somebody with the Emerald Echo passive, because with that, it's actually going to last 2 turns. And now, you've got somebody who's almost invincible for the initial fight, right? When 2 teams in Auto will clash together, they'll usually throw out all their biggest abilities in the beginning and try to take out somebody on the enemy team. So if you use Dove's Embrace on somebody with hate, you make them invincible for 2 turns, or at least give them crazy defense and spirit for 2 turns. And then the enemy team just wastes their AP trying to get that guy out. I think there are scenarios where it's going to be really good. I've seen it in manual play, where people will do that to engage the enemy team, and it works really well. I'll also try to showcase this eventually, but I don't have the armor pots to get this to max yet, so that's why I'm waiting for that one. And then Elde's TMR is an interesting one. It has the perfect setup for a Drain Force build, an Evasion and Drain Force build. It has a ton of HP, some Evasion, and then the character that uses it increases max HP for 3 turns, which means you increase the Drain Force damage for a couple turns as well. Now, there are quite a few TMRs that are great at level 1, and I think you don't have a reason to level them really, but you can still make great use of them. Howlett's Coat is one of them. Actually, you can't even level it. It's a level 1 TMR altogether. But for your magic characters, if you want to be able to make them resistant to physical attacks for 1 turn, you can use that. I don't think it's really good in auto, it's actually rather useless. But in manual play, in some forms of PvP, where you know you want to close in on the enemy team and not get punished for it, it's really strong, because you have 1 turn where you're basically immune to the enemy team if they are physical attackers, and you can do all the movement you want, go grab a crystal and whatnot. So it's a strong one to have. Then I believe you've all seen Ryu's TMR in action, the zombie transformation. I think it's a great one, and there's not a big difference between reviving at 10% HP or 20% HP. It comes down to, will you play quickly enough to heal or attack one more time before going down, because either way, the enemy should be able to hit you for 20% of your max HP, so you will die after one more hit no matter what. Then Ninus's TMR, it's great. It makes you immune to sleep, confusion, and charm for 3 turns, and that's all you need out of it. Getting extra regen is kind of meh. It's a little bit of a bonus, but nothing too important. And then the difference between 5 and 10 isn't worth all the armor pots that you're gonna need to get it all the way to 20. So I would definitely use that at level 1, so you can protect against these status effects, but don't worry about the rest. So that was it, guys. There are a ton of TMRs in War of the Vision. I know I haven't featured them all in videos, but more often than not, you'll see me use one of those on the list here, because I find that they're all just very impactful in fights. So if you have any questions, please let me know, or if I forgot one that you think is really important, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, if you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It will make it more likely that you see my content in the future. And then, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.